Okay, so the first thing I had to do was cut the foam in half. Now I didn't have any sheet foam on hand, so I bought like a bunch of car sponge and then I glued them together. This is the mouth plate. So I cut the mouth plate out of cardboard. The patterns I used were actually from this quite well-known puppeteer called Adam Kreutinger. He has really fantastic patterns. So the pattern for the head, I had to cut out two of them because I just stick them together. Now I had bits and bobs of sponge and foam everywhere, and they weren't kind of listening to me, so I switched between using Uhu glue and hot glue. I think because the material is very porous, so it's very hard for the glue to hold on. I bought fabric glue, but realized it was just a bit stupid. So now I'm cutting all the bits of sponge off to just give it a bit more shape, and I attached the mouth plate using hot glue. I burned myself a couple of times, which was great. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm putting in sort of like a head plug so that when I move the puppet around, um, basically the tops of my fingers will touch the head plug so that it doesn't move around too much when I move the puppet up and down. So I cut out a pattern for the fleece head. Um, then I had to stitch it together. So I was having a meeting during this video, so I had to talk and cut and work at the same time. Then I sewed it together using a sewing machine. You can see here, and I attached the neck, and that's how what it looked like. Yeah, so it was pretty nice. They said leave a gap at the back that's big enough, you know, so you could put the fleece over the sponge. So yep, that's the end of day one, and this is how my Muppet puppet looked like. So day two was hair. I first started by doing a sort of little like a wig piece for the puppet. And then I came up with an idea of how to spin the yarn, so I didn't have to like go through it over and over again. Um, I kind of had like no idea how to do the hair, so I just kind of imagined I was making like a real wig. So I stitched hair at the bottom, and then I kept going up and up and up, and then I realized it was a gigantic mistake because um, the hair was too long at the bottom and too short at the top. So, and there were bits of skin showing, so I had to use glue. You just saw it just now, and it was really ugly because the yarn wouldn't stick to the fabric, to the felt. And then I had to stitch the top of the head and all the way around so that the wig plate, I guess, would stay in. And, that was quite frustrating, but I guess maybe one of the simpler steps. But yeah, it was a lot of yarn and it was really heavy, and I had to get out a comb and like, you know, arrange it and everything. So yeah, the hair was was tough. I gave her a haircut as well. Hey, that's how she looked like. Okay, so day three was body. First, I had to chapalang the sponges, just glue them anyhow because I didn't have enough. I didn't have any foam sheets, and this time I cut them to about maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. Because my head was actually way too thick. Held them together using tape and some glue and cut out the pattern. Um, yeah, the masking tape wasn't very good on sponge, but it was like the most I could do. So I had to make two of these body pattern things because the puppet, obviously has a 3D body. Um, I have noticed that car sponge is great, but it's probably not going to last for very long. But even if your sponge looks really ugly, it's okay because the fleece covering will cover it. So that's a silver lining. Yeah, I can see I really had to glue all the crevices together so that it would hold. So now this part I had to join both bodies together, and they actually recommend using this thing called contact cement, but I didn't have any of that and it smells gross. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to stitch this because I think the sponge is pretty thick and it'll hold. So at this point, my sanity was kind of slipping, and I needed to stitch as quick as I could because I needed to do the fleece body. Need to cut out the fleece pattern and then sew the fleece together and then stretch it over the body. Make sure there's a space for the neck so you can cut the sponge of the neck. So I sewed it together and then I stuffed it over the puppet. I think I forgot to take a video of this. Then you stitch the bottom of the puppet, the armhole of the puppet, to the bottom of the body, and here you go. Okay, so day four was arms, and arms was by far the hardest thing to make. Because they're so skinny and because they're so long, it was a bit of a nightmare trying to fit the batting, the foam, and everything. So first you have to cut it out, and then this part you're watching now is me trying to like flip the sleeve inside out. Um, but it was so hard. I think I used like chopsticks and pens and everything. It was horrible. Then next you have to make the foam hand. So the foam hand and the foam arm are actually separate. The reason why is because you need to put wire in between the foam arms to give them a little bit more shape. But what happened was either I didn't cut the foam properly, and when I put in the wire, as you can see, I used the hanger wires are actually just for the rods. The smaller ones I bought, they're actually like green gardening wires, like what people use to prop their plants up. So here was me bending the wires and trying to make them slightly stronger. Then I had to glue them, a bit like Edward Scissorhands-ish, and to glue them using hot glue. And I thought everything was hunky-dory, so I glued the other one on top. And then I tried to fit it in, and it wouldn't fit. So I decided to put batting inside the fingers and then cut the foam hand to make a circle, so I wouldn't be able to bend any of the fingers properly because there's no wire in the fingers. So I was like, yay, okay, I'm gonna put in more batting for the arm because screw this stupid foam thing. It's so frustrating. So I did that for the second arm. The second arm, you can see I kind of like, yeah, I cut into a circle and I stuffed it. Um, yeah, so the pro is it's easier, the cons is it looks uglier. So I kind of regret that. And then you put in the wire and you stitch around the wire so you have two arms. Um, so then I propped the puppet upright and I had to sew on the arms, and I sewed on her arms in I think 3 or 4 different ways because the first time what happened was the movement wasn't very nice. So I took out the batting of the arm and decided to shove foam in because I think foam is a bit more like pliant. So that took forever. And then I sewed the arm on again. And then I fiddled around the puppet and tried to make it move, and I realized that the positioning of the arm was wrong, so I had to sew it on vertically instead. So this is one arm, this is the other arm, and there you go. Okay, so we reached day five, clothes. Now I decided to use an old t-shirt, and I think the first mistake I made was I decided to cut it down the front and put it on her like a jacket. And then I realized it was stupid because I hadn't even cut out the proper pattern yet, and I just went yoink in half. So don't do that. Measure the pattern out first and then cut whatever you need to cut because once it's cut, it's so difficult to salvage. I tried to put it on her like a jacket, but it was really difficult. So I kind of abandoned this black shirt and then I kind of got another black shirt. So with the second black shirt, I actually drew a pattern this time and then I pinned it onto the other black shirt, just to measure and to make sure everything was like hunky-dory. Again, it's easier to just work from an existing piece of material instead of trying to make new clothes. But if you have to make new clothes, then, all the best. I am not a seamstress, so I struggled so hard with the shirt. But yeah, after a lot of pinning and some bruises and whatnots, yeah, managed to get it on her.
I'm not naked anymore. Yay! My fingers are weird.